May of April or May of 2010, the Jesuits organized a meeting in Mexico City for presidents and other administrators of higher education institutes, universities, so on. There are probably about 200 such places around the world at least. So there's a big global meeting, and it was a great example of kind of what this network is and the potential power of it. And the general of the Jesuits call their global boss a general. So the Father General of the Jesuits is Adolfo Nicolas, who's a Spaniard. And he gave an address to this group, and I had met him, just as it turned out, once in the Philippines. I was given a talk before he ever was a general of the Jesuits, and one of the things that really struck me about him, which is a real leadership issue for me, is that he really, he was such a gentleman. I was going to give a talk at this institute he was in charge of, and so he greeted me, takes me to dinner, very interested in what I'm doing, what I have to say. And then 2, 3, 4 years later, this guy ends up general of the Jesuits. And I think people often overlook that. In other words, who you are on television is one thing, or who you are in the magazine, or what you say in this talk. But at the end of the day, if there's a gap between what you say and who you are, people really pick up on that. And I come from an industry, investment banking, where it's kind of rife with that. A big issue is people walk the talk. People talk the talk, but they don't walk the talk. And you end up with people being very cynical about is this person for real? They're a fake. There's nothing authentic here. They're just putting something over on me. Anyway, that's tangential. So the Jesuits are having this meeting in Mexico City, and when I had given that talk in the Philippines, I spoke about ideas drawn from heroic leadership, which in general are very positive, very complimentary about the Jesuits and kind of their style of living and working and some of their culture. And at the end of that talk, I guess somebody asked, okay, you said all this nice thing about the Jesuits, and what do they have to work on? Why don't you tell us some other kinds of things? And I guess I sort of hemmed and hawed, and then the question got asked again. Eventually I said, well, one of the things that I notice coming from a corporate background, by way of trying to draw a contrast, is very strong sense of urgency. Like we felt at JP Morgan that, look, we're doing something very important, and we kind of need to get results. And second, very strong feeling of, well, how do we know we succeeded? And so measurement, accountability, evaluation, and urgency, to me, were two things that I note very prominently in corporate environments, sometimes for bad reasons, because you have this kind of tyranny of the stock market analyst who only cares about the result you deliver this quarter, and that has many, many negative aspects to it. But it has positive, you're being held very accountable, and you feel a sense of urgency. So I talked about those two things as it would strike me, things that the Jesuit world could think about a little bit. And for example, I often, I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I'm a big believer in the whole Jesuit mission, and often schools would talk about their mission in terms of something like developing men and women for others, and maybe we could, by extension, extend this point to a lot of nonprofits generally, which often have a mission that's expressed in idealistic, soft kind of terms. They were trying to accomplish things that are critically important, but that don't sound like return 15% for shareholders. So my question, often is, not only for Jesuit schools, but for all other kinds of institutions that might talk about their mission or vision, those kind of words. Okay, well, how good a job are you doing? And I went to a school, and that they know exactly what % of my class donated money to the school last year, but nobody has a clue how many of us are men for others or women for others. And to me, it might be very interesting. You know, I don't mean it as a joke. It might be very interesting just to think about that. You know, we even like, well, what actually would a man or woman for others look like at age 40, 45? And how many do we have? What if we wrote a letter? You know, what if we started by just saying we're trying to figure out how many and see what people had to say? And my suspicion is that in many organizations and nonprofits, people might be a little intimidated by that, but I bet people might be very pleasantly surprised by what they found out. You know, that in fact, somehow they're delivering better on the mission than, you know, if they held their feet to the fire, they'd discover good things, not terrible things. So, yeah, you know, this idea of a sense of urgency, you know, that what we're doing is really important, and therefore it's also important that we do it, you know, and we can't kind of wait 2, 3, 4 years and putz around, until everybody feels totally comfortable that this is the perfect idea, because it won't be the perfect idea. So let's get on and learn. And the idea that we hold ourselves accountable in the sense of, you know, we measure even difficult things, soft things, confusing things, that we try to find a way to understand how we're doing.